Thank you very much for joining me this evening. I am Dr. Isaac Opoku-Asare, and this is Healthy Heart. I believe that we have an exciting program for you today, and I will encourage you that even right at this time, you can call a friend or somebody that you know, and we can all listen. They can all listen in, and I believe that is going to go a long way to help them. I want to thank my producer and all the people that have one way or the other been supporting us to get this program going. So today we're going to be talking about something that I believe that it affects virtually everybody in this country and probably in the world, and it is about sugars. So we'll be talking about sugars, and then we'll be giving you some updates about COVID-19, what is going on, and we believe that is going to be a great session. So to start with, why do we need to talk about sugars? Because virtually everybody consumes it, and it is an indispensable part of our food. So before we go to sugars, I told you that we're going to go to sugars, but before we go to sugars, I just want us to spend a few minutes to talk about carbohydrates. So to state what we've talked about a little bit a few weeks ago, that food is made up of three major components. The micronutrients of the components of our food is either carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. We talked about fats last week. Over the last 2 weeks, we've talked about fats, and you can go and listen to us on either YouTube, and I believe that is going to go a long way to help you. So we're going to be talking about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are good for you, and a good diet should contain the appropriate amount of carbohydrates, the appropriate amount of fats, and appropriate amount of protein. The challenge that we've had is the attempt to run away from fats, which is not bad if it's consumed in appropriate amount and the right type of fat is consumed, because there's good fat and there's bad fat. Based on the things that we did, I believe that is going to go a long way to help you over the last 2 weeks. If you consume the appropriate amount of fats, then it is good. Appropriate amount of the good fat, then it is good. But in an attempt to run away from the fat, most people ended up moving towards carbohydrates. And in moving towards the carbohydrates, that has led to many health problems that we see. We believe that the consumption of inappropriate amount of carbohydrates is one of the major reasons why diabetes is spreading all over the world, and it's becoming an epidemic. Diabetes is increasing virtually every part of the world because of the increased amount of type of carbohydrates which we're going to talk about. So what type of carbohydrates are there? There are two main types of carbohydrates. We'll come back and go into these fine details. But the two types of carbohydrates that we have, let me say the three types, then we'll go into the two classifications. There are three types of carbohydrates, which is sugars, starch, and fiber. I told you that we'll be doing a discussion on fiber. And then I think when we do a discussion on fiber, we'll do starch and fiber as one group, and today we're talking about the sugars. So why is that important? Because it is the sugars that are responsible for most of the diabetes and associated problems with the heart, and that lack of knowledge, let me put it this way, lack of knowledge about sugars has contributed to many cardiovascular problems. And that is why we're talking about it. So let us talk about sugars. So in terms of the sugars, we have simple sugars and we have complex sugars. Okay. So what are the simple sugars? The simple sugars is most of them, not to be too technical, is most of the refined sugars that you have around. You see a picture of somebody drinking, right? He thinks that he's drinking a sweetened tea or something like that. In essence, what is actually happening is that the person is consuming a glass full of sugars, but they do not know. So the simple sugars are all over the place. And it does not matter where it is coming from. So far as you are consuming them, that can lead to significant problems. So let us look at why people love sugar, and more or less you can almost be, the society is getting more or less like hang on sugars. This is the issue. As we talked about, that 1 gram of sugar, or 1 gram of carbohydrate, it contains 4 calories, and 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. So in essence, 1 teaspoon of sugar is 16 what? Calories. The thing about sugars is, compared to fat, especially refined sugars, is most refined sugars are, almost all refined sugars are simple sugars. So when you consume them, they go straight into your body. So instead of if you decide to eat a bowl full of oatmeal or a bowl full of whole wheat preparation, compared to a bowl full of simple sugar preparation, there are many of them out there. What is going to happen is that when you eat the simple sugar preparation, and there are many breakfast preparations that contain a lot of that, you feel energized. Food that contains simple sugar, because the simple sugar rush into the blood, you get this rush of energy. And because they rush into your body system, they also go down. So you whenever you eat simple sugars, the reason why it makes people go back to simple sugars is the fact that when you eat it, you get this rush. And after some time, the simple sugars are quickly processed and they are depleted. So you go into a rush and a crash. And because you crash, when you eat simple sugars, you end up what? Going back again for more. And that is why people who consume sodas and all the things that contains a lot of sugars, a lot of simple sugars, there's a tendency to go back because of the what? Because of the rush and crash that is associated with them. So sometimes certain adults, they said, oh, the kids have got sugar rush. I'll tell you this, adults get sugar rush, but they get it in a calm way. And the way you know you are having the rush and the crash is the tendency for you to go back for it more because of what it does to you. And that is why you need to be able to stay away. Whereas if you consume fiber, high fiber preparations, which is a form of carbohydrate, what the fiber does is, the first of all, they create a sense of fullness in you. And that sense of fullness in you will prevent you from going back to eat. The second thing about the fibers compared to the simple sugars is the fact that it takes a long time for it to be processed, and the energy content in it is released slowly to you. So your goal is, as much as possible, to cut down on your simple sugars. So let us look at, where do we get the simple sugars from? The simple sugar, if you look at the picture, the guy is trying to drink soda, right? He's pouring soda into his cup. You see what he's pouring? He's actually pouring sugars into it. So that is one of the major causes. Let me be very blunt to you. The number one cause of added sugar. The number one cause of too much sugar in this country, I'm repeating this, is sweetened beverages. And the sweetened beverages are, let's name them. Sodas, number one. People think that they are drinking tea. But if you drink if you drink a sweetened tea, sweet tea, it contains the same amount of water and even probably more sugar than the soda. So do not have the idea that because you are drinking tea, that is the reason. So there is something they call enhanced drinks, right? And some of these ones are sports drinks. They are supposedly considered healthy drinks because they put the name sport on them. But let me tell you, most of them contain a ton of sugar. So sweetened beverages, they are number one. I'm repeating this. It's not coming from me. It's coming from American Heart Association. So if you want to learn anything out of this talk, then your goal is to move away from what? Sweetened beverages. And let me add another one. Coffee by itself is good. But coffee, sweetened coffee, it needs a ton of sugars to be added to it. And we'll later show you a picture of it. A ton of sugars that needed to be added to the coffee to make it sweet. And at the end of the day, it can lead to what? It can lead to the diabetes and all the associated problems. So, many good things like tea by itself is good. Coffee by itself may be good. At least based on the New England Journal, it's not a bad thing in terms of coffee. But the amount of sugars that goes into it is a problem. So let us put it this way. As you see in our picture, we showed you the picture of sugars, right? They comes in various forms. White sugar, brown sugar, all these forms. My goal to you is this. They are all sugars, okay? Definitely, the white sugar is worse than the cane sugars. But they are all sugars, and your goal is to limit them. It's very important. So that is number one. The other sources of simple sugars, simple carbohydrates that I'm going to talk about, because I want to add simple carbohydrates to our talk and make this important. So the simple carbohydrates, because that is where it finds itself, is white flour. The white flour, you see, a lot of people think that, okay, I'm not eating sugar. They say, I don't add any food, I don't add any sugar to my food. But that guy, he ate a 6 foot white bread, right? That 6 foot white bread, it contains as much simple sugars as probably the soda that you were drinking. So that is why it is important that even as you decide to stay away from sugars, it is also important to stay away from all simple carbohydrates because they end up doing the same thing in your body. So I will strongly recommend that you must switch to oatmeal bread, or you must switch to whole wheat bread. Those whole wheat preparations will serve you better because the release, first of all, they're going to create a fullness in you, as I said, and the release of the sugars in them is steady, so that you don't go through the rush and the crash that is associated with simple sugars, and that causes people to go back over and over, because once you go through the crash, there's a tendency for you to go back. I've seen people do this all the time, and it can come to you in various ways. People who love coffee, right? If you are somebody that puts a lot of sugar in your coffee and you drink 3 teaspoons of, if you drink 3 cups of coffee in a day, your consumption of sugars can be really, really, really high. So let us talk about certain simple things here. What is the other source of sugar that you find? I told you the simple sugars. Apart from the simple sugars, simple carbohydrates, the simple carbohydrates in terms of white flour that is used to prepare the bagel, the cookies, all those things are there. They also add a ton of sugar. I mean, cake contains a ton of sugar. So it is important that those pastries and other things that you eat, you limit the amount that you eat. The amount of the cake, the amount of the cookies that are made with white flour. They may look brown. The reason why they look brown is because they've added chocolate, right? But I'm going to tell you, even brown sugar, consuming brown sugars is not ideal as much as possible. So let us look at this. Certain numbers here to give you a perspective. Number one, I told you that one gram of a carbohydrate gives you 4 calories, and 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams, right? So technically it gives you 16 calories. So let us look at a bottle of soda. The average soda bottle contains generally around 150 calories, about 150 to about 120. One is about, in the United States, most average size can soda contains around 130 to 150 calories. That is soda. And all this, sometimes the sports drinks and other things, that is the average. So technically what is happening is that you are consuming around 8 to 9 teaspoons of sugar. Teaspoons of sugar. And that is a lot. So your goal is to be able to what? To limit that. So what does the American Heart Association tells us about sugars? How many teaspoons of sugar should you consume? So the general recommendation for women is what? Is 6 teaspoons of sugar. Period. So if you're a woman and you consume 1 can of soda, or 1 can of sweet tea, or 1 can of sweet coffee, or 1 can of energy, so-called energy sports drink. The reason why they are energy sports drinks is because most of them contain a ton of sugar, and that will give you the rush. If you already consume just one of them, you have exceeded the recommended amount of sugars that you should consume for the day. So it's 6 teaspoons for women and 9 teaspoons for men. That is coming not from me. That is coming from American Heart Association. These are the things that they recommend in terms of what? Simple sugars. But what is the consumption? What is the current consumption of sugars in America? You want to know the number? The average American consumes 20 teaspoons of sugar. You're going to see it. We'll give you this information. At the end of it, we'll show you this infographic. But we can actually show you now, where you see in terms of recommending, it says sip smarter. If you look at the sip smarter, you see a picture over here of a teaspoon, and it says that the average American consumes 20 teaspoons of sugar a day. So what does it mean? It means that the average American woman consumes 3 times as much sugar than what is recommended by the American Heart Association. And the average American man consumes double the recommended amount of sugars that they should take every day. So that is why I said this discussion is something that affects everybody. It's not only me. Anybody that is here, this is something that affects us, and it is important that you make the appropriate steps to move away from them. And here you see the picture again where he says that the number one source of all sugars is what is sweetened beverages. So sweetened tea, sweetened coffee, sodas, these are all things that, and one can of soda may contain 10 teaspoons, which is probably double the amount of teaspoon, the amount of sugar that a woman should consume. So probably if you're a woman and you drink soda, probably drink half of it, and the half of that sugar should be enough. So how do we make the changes? So this is very important for all of us to make the necessary changes. Let me tell you places where you'll be surprised. The first thing is, before you drink anything, before you drink any sweetened tea preparation and other things, look at the sugar that is on it. And most of these companies that are producing the simple sugars have found a smart way to go around it, So this is what they are doing. Instead of writing the sugar, they will write glucose or maltose or sucrose. It ends with what? OSE. Whenever you see OSE, it's something to do with what? Sugar. So by that means, instead of writing sugar, you will not see sugar on the label. We've done a discussion on labels, and we'll come back to that and show you how to read labels. But you need to watch out for that. The fact that they've not written sugar on it does not mean that it doesn't contain sugar. They will write something. They will write a fructose, they will write a glucose, they will write a maltose, something like that. But that is the sugar that we're talking about. So if you look at it, for instance, if you look at it and it says it contains, instead of saying sugar, it contains glucose. And the glucose is 20 grams, So there's another smart way of going about this. Instead of telling you the amount of calorie or telling you the teaspoons that you need to, they're going to tell you 20 grams. But 20 grams, as I've told you, 1 gram of sugar is 4, right? Is 4 calories. So by having 20 grams of sugar in that particular drink, that means that you are consuming what? You are consuming 160. Let me give you this story. A patient of mine came to me, and then the patient told me, I've started very healthy habits, and look at me, I'm drinking this sports drink, and I said, why is your diabetes going through the roof? Because instead of her diabetes going down, her diabetes was going up. She needed more insulin. She didn't need anything. So I asked her, why is your diabetes going up? Why is it getting worse? And she looked at me. I said, the answer to your diabetes is in your hands. And she said, why? I said, look at the sports drink. So that particular sports drink that person was consuming. I'm not saying that sports drinks are not good. But the so-called energy drinks sometimes contains what? Contains too much sugars. And they have been a source of big problems for many people like this patient of mine. And we looked at it. And when we looked at it, that jar, so the way they go about it is that this is what they said, that the recommended intake per 7, that is how they will calculate it. The recommended 7 on it was, if you look at the recommended one for that patient, the amount of sugar that was in it was about, I think it was about 15 gram of sugar. So we did a calculation of 15 grams of sugar, and that came to 15 times 4, that will give you about 60. And in just one bottle that she was consuming, if she finishes that energy drink that she was consuming, it has 4 servings. So the smart way they go about it is that they will give you per 7, and you need to know the total amount of 7 in that bottle. So that bottle had 4 servings. So it means that she was consuming 15 times 4 if she finished that bottle, which is 60 grams of sugar. And that translates into 240 what? Calories. And she started a healthy life pattern by starting to consume that sports drink. And look at what was happening. Her diabetes was going through the roof. Let me tell you this thing. I told the patient, make a decision to just stop this sports drink and cut down the amount of sugar that you put in your coffee. And you're going to see dramatic change. Just by doing that and continuing with her medications, her requirement of insulin and her requirement of other things have come down. And that is why what we are telling you, these simple measures can prevent you from adding more and more medications to treat your diabetes, to treat your heart problems. Because why is this important? As your sugar gets bad, as your diabetes gets bad, it has a relationship with your cholesterol. Your cholesterol, especially the triglycerides, will start getting bad. So any talk about sugar is actually a talk also about what? About your cholesterol. And that is why it is important to control your sugars. And it's not only to do with diabetes, but it has also something to do with your cholesterol, your triglycerides, you know. I recently had a patient and I checked the patient triglycerides. The patient triglycerides was almost 700. That was worrisome. And I told the patient, I am pretty sure that your diabetes is very, very bad. The patient said, I don't think so. I think I've been eating a little bit bad. I said, okay, why don't we check your diabetes? I checked the patient's hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of the diabetes. And the patient's hemoglobin A1C was 13.5. Listen, a normal hemoglobin A1C ideally should be less than 7, right? This patient's hemoglobin A1C was 13.5. I mean, to me, it's called sugar toxicity. And it's all because of the fact that he was not taking care of himself. And that is why the triglycerides were bad. Of course, he also did the testing in a non-fasting manner, but it clearly showed. So when the results came, the patient was very surprised that I could tell him based on the cholesterol that his diabetes was bad. But that is the truth of it. Because triglycerides, one of the major causes of triglycerides, is coming from this. So let us talk about how do you address the intake of sugars. Number one, let's make life simple. How do you go about it? You have to replace your sugars, simple sugars, with something. Or let's back off a little bit. Cut down how much you're consuming. I used to put a ton because I wanted my coffee. I love coffee. At least I drink coffee. I drink coffee in the morning, and in the afternoon I do decaf. Decaf still contains some coffee, so it's not caffeine free. And I wanted my coffee to taste sweet, so I put a lot of sugar in it to make it taste sweet. And if you want your coffee to taste sweet, most of the time 1 teaspoon of sugar doesn't get it done. So that 1 teaspoon of sugar, because it's not going to get it done, you're going to add more and more and more. And that is a problem. So one of the things you need to do is, first of all, cut the amount of sugars, simple sugar that you put in it. I'm not a big fan of this, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to see a picture of sweetness. You can replace your simple sugar with a sweetener, and that may be okay, but I just don't like the taste of a sweetener. And that is something that I generally would not recommend to many people. But if you're having difficulty cutting down your sugars, that is one of the ways to go about it. Let me tell you, a lot of people don't know, but milk contains sugar. So in my case, when I prepare my coffee in the morning, I don't put in sugar because the milk already contains sugar. And that is why you need to be careful. From today, if you are listening to me, after this talk, go and take your milk and look at it and see the amount of sugars that is in it. And boy, chocolate milk contains a ton of simple sugars. So at home, if you have it, because I drink lactose-free milk, and you can look at how much sugar is found in the milk that we consume compared to the chocolate milk. And most of the time, the chocolate milk contains around 50% more sugars. So as much as possible, I've cut it down to reduce my intake of simple sugars. And that is good. So when you go out there to eat, if you can, and you are getting tea or something like that, either use a sweetener or drink the unsweetened tea. Sometimes the unsweetened tea with a little bit of a sweetener can go a long way to help you. You know, people don't know that salad dressing, even salad dressings, some salad dressings contains sugars. So the guy says he's eating salad and he puts so much salad dressing on it. Oh boy, that contains sugar. And there is this knowledge, there's this concept that cane sugar is better than non-cane sugar. The bottom line is this: you got to limit the sugar. But I've taken time to talk about this. I'm going to take my time to talk about this part. All sugars are bad, but high fructose sugars are really bad. So whenever you are going to drink anything and it contains high fructose corn syrup, do your best that if you can, that you drink the least amount of it. And if you can avoid it. High fructose corn syrup should be consumed in the least amount possible. And if possible, avoid it. Avoiding high fructose corn syrup is a very, very difficult endeavor because most of the drinks out there, they contain high fructose corn syrup. You can write it down. High fructose corn syrup, you want to stay away from it because it can go a long way to create problems for you. So those, you starting with cutting it back, I will add avoid. And the one to avoid is high fructose corn syrup. And cutting it back is these things. But you cannot just cut back the sugars. You must find sugars in other places. As I've told you, in my coffee, when I use milk, no sugars, because the milk already contains that. So those of you who love coffee, who love tea, adding milk to it can replace the sugars in them, and that will be a way to go about it. And that will control your sugar levels to a large extent. The second thing and the best thing, the really best thing that you can do is to drink water. Drink water. In my own house, I realize that we are drinking more and more because, they talk about, this is a fruit juice, okay? The fruit juice, as much as possible, look at the amount of sugars in the fruit juice. I'm not saying all fruit juices are bad. At least the best ones will be no added sugar. That is the best one. But even the no added sugar, look at the content of it. So when you eat, drink water. Please. Because when we go to restaurants and when we go to many places, you eat the food that has got 1,600 calories. You eat the food, check the total amount of calories that you consume. You eat the food that contains 800 calories. And probably those calories will go into your system slowly. But on top of that, you get a glass full. And that is why we started with that picture. The picture of a glass Going there and drinking a glass full of what? Of a drink. Actually, you are consuming a bowl full of what? Of sugars. And if you continue that pattern, it's I want to be brutally honest with you. If you have a strong, especially if you have a family history of diabetes, the tendency that you're going to get diabetes is very, very high. You know, most of the diabetes in this country is coming from the consumption of too much sugars. And that is something that you need to avoid. So drink water. If you cannot drink ordinary water, drink sparkled water. That is what I do. It's a little bit expensive, but I think that is good. And for certain people, to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of it, but it's a good thing because it contains 0 calories with not all the diet drinks added to it. So the diet components that are added, those sweetness added to it, and they are called flavored waters. I mean, and it's not the enriched drinks. The enriched drinks, some of them contain a lot of sugar. So sometimes flavored ones is like strawberry flavored water. I realize that certain kids they like it. It's not my first recommendation, but that will be a way to go. That will go a long way to cut down your simple sugars. I cannot repeat this. Avoiding simple sugar will go a long way to help you. Many ways. Cutting down the white, it doesn't matter. White, brown, green, any form, color of the sugar, cut it out as much as you can. Don't be deceived by cane sugar and all those sugars. It doesn't make a difference. The difference is, though there may be some difference, is infinitesimal. I mean, it is so small that it's not something that you must lay emphasis on it. So you got to cut it down, right? Because if you continue to consume these sugars and you have a problem with your weight, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, because the sugars will cause your blood pressure, will cause your cholesterol to go up, and will cause you to have diabetes. And when diabetes and cholesterol come together and you add a little bit of high blood pressure, that is a recipe for heart attack, which we don't want you to have. And that is why we're talking about that. Now, what are the other sources? So of sugars that will help you. So you can move from these simple sugars, simple carbohydrates, because sugars are simple carbohydrates, and move to complex one. How do you find it? So, instead of eating the cake, instead of eating 4 cookies, instead of eating all the desserts out there that is full of white flour and full of sugars, simple sugars, you can replace them with fruits. Fruits are a good source of complex sugars, and it will take a long time for it to be broken down. So if you want to eat something sweet, after you've eaten your food, you can get apples. Apples are, I love them. Replace that drink with an apple, and that will help you, right? It contains some sugars, but the fructose that is found over there is very good. So replace them with that. Begin to change your desserts and what? And bring in complex sugars, and that will go a long way to do that. Bring some strawberry there. All those ones are good ways to do it. The probably the most important one that I want to say over here is that before you drink anything, I'm putting it this way, look at the label. I cannot reinforce that. And if you look at the label, remember what I'm telling you, that if you are a woman, you are supposed to consume 6 teaspoons of sugar. And the 6 teaspoons of sugar Let's make it very simple. 1 teaspoon contains 4 grams. So if on the bottle, as per 7, that they have written that it contains 15 grams. I see these days that they will say it contains 15 grams. When they say it contains 15 grams, it means that you have already, remember the number 4. That is a key thing I want you to remember. So if the label contains 15 grams divided by 4, that means that you've got already what? 4 teaspoons. If the label contains calories, remember this. You divide it by the number 16, because 1 gram of carbohydrate contains 4 calories and 1 teaspoon contains 4 grams. So make it very simple. People have asked me, this gets too complicated. I say it's not. So if they tell you the number of servings on the drink. If they are quoting fructose, glucose, or they are quoting sugars, divide the calorie by the number 16. If they have written grams on it, divide that grams by the number what? 16. Then look at the bottle. So if per 7, you can determine that if I consume as per 7, if I'm consuming, let's say you have a bottle and they say it has 4 servings. That means that bottle, if you're going to consume the whole bottle and 1 serving contains 15 grams, it means that 1 serving contains 4 teaspoons. And if the bottle contains 4 servings, it means that if you consume that bottle, you're going to end up with how many teaspoons? 16 teaspoons. And if you're a woman, that means that just by consuming that sweetened tea and sweetened coffee and sweetened that soda, you've ended up consuming 3 times your recommendation. I'm taking time. I'm going to repeat this one more time. As I said, whenever you pick up a drink, if they've written the sugar content or glucose or something like that, if they are stating it in grams per 7, divide it by 4. And that will tell you the number of teaspoons you are consuming. And if they've written calories, divide it by 16, and that will tell you the number of teaspoons that you are consuming. And if you decide to go ahead and consume the whole bottle, then multiply the number of teaspoons you get per 7 with the number of servings, and that will tell you how much added sugar you've already consumed. You've not added the sugars that you did in your coffee to it. You've not added all those cookies and all the desserts that was brought to you at your workplace. You've not added all those ones. So when you add them, you realize that no wonder that most American women consume 3 times the amount of sugars, and the men consume almost twice the amount of sugars. I hope that these things have been helpful, and you're going to take the necessary steps. Number 1, let's finish with that. Cut it down. Number 2, if possible, replace all your sweetened drinks with water. Period. Water contains 0 calories. Number 3, replace your desserts moving forward with complex sugars, which comes in the form of fruits, which will go a long way to help you. I hope that we're going to get reports of the changes that you've done in your life that will make a big difference. Taking care of sugars is not just taking care of diabetes. It is taking care of your cholesterol, because the combination of sugars and cholesterol can go a long way to cause a lot of damage. We'll show you this picture of what you can do. It talks about various it says life can still be sweet. And you can look at the various ways in which your sugar, you can replace it. It comes in various forms. But right from home, you can make those changes, right? It can still be sweet, but you are making smarter choices. And that infographics is a very fine way for us to be able to end our discussion on sugars, because I love what it says over there. You're going to see the picture over here. So even things that you buy outside, you can make them all at home with the least amount of sugar in them. You know, I'm not giving a bad name to lemonade, but some of the lemonade are the boy. Try to prepare lemonade at home and try to put sugar in it yourself. You'll be shocked about how much sugar you need to put into a lemonade for it to taste sweet. But the whole idea that is lemonade makes people think that it is what? It is good. I believe that there are healthy lemonades out there, but you can prepare the lemonade at home. But if you are going to drink the lemonade, because I forgot about the lemonade, that's why I'm adding it. If you are going to drink the lemonade, then it is important that the lemonade that you are drinking, it is one that contains the appropriate amount of it. So if you look at it, it says sweet sugar. If you look at it, you see all the switches that you can make, the sources of where the sugars are coming from. Where do you find it? You find it on, if you look at the last page of it, you're going to find if you, let's start with it. It shows you the places where all the other sugars are coming from, and you see the American Heart Association recommendation. And how do you find the sugar? I've talked about the label, and then replace them. Replace them. The ultimate, the last one, is what? Is drinking water and add the complex sugars to it. And I believe that is going to go a long way to help you. Our time is up. We want to hear from you. Send us your questions, and we are here to answer them. And hopefully, with your support and with the questions that we'll get from you, we'll be able to help provide the necessary answers that you need to lead a healthy lifestyle to ensure ideal cardiovascular health. This has been Dr. Isaac Opoku-Asare. This has been Healthy Heart. And once again, I want to thank my producer who has been doing an excellent job. Next time when you pick a bottle of soda, remember the small particles of sugar that is going into your mouth. Thank you and good night. God bless you and God bless America.